Joining me as he does each and every week is Sky News Australia's media watchdog columnist, Gerard Henderson. Welcome back to the show, as
Thank
always.
You. Pleasure.
Now, Media Watch, Linton Bessar, we've spoken about him a little bit. He got tricked by the photos of the poor disabled kid. Didn't correct it.
Never corrected it.
But he's got a lot of advice for us on how to interview people.
And for others.
You've noticed that when ABC journalists have a contentious interview or a bad interview, that he doesn't necessarily put the same rigour into criticising. Let's listen to a grab.
What's your message to the Australian government?
Well, look, I'm really worried. You know, I truly love Australia and I lived there for quite a few years. I never imagined in my life it would be so dangerous as a Jew to the Jewish community to just walk in the street, that people can chant from the Sydney Opera House steps against the Jews, that I would see marches with
That's contested.
Look, I heard it myself. Don't dig your head in the sand.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's not contested. They weren't saying "go the Jews." They were saying something negative towards Jewish
And even if
people.
they were saying "where's the Jews," it's just as bad, because why do they want them?
They're trying to hunt Jewish people.
They're trying to hunt them down. So "guess the Jews, where the Jews" doesn't make any difference, so it doesn't warrant a correction.
Isn't it weird that that was the defence of that whole Sydney Opera House, which is what this is referencing? The defence was, no, they were only trying to find all the Jews. The mob was only trying
That's
to...
all right.
Insane.
Which is pretty shocking and shows an absolute abysmal ignorance of history. But that sort of passed. I mean, that was passed, and Linton Bessar doesn't pick these kind of comments up. I mean, if Sherry Markson has an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu and he gets 4 experts to come out and talk about it, when this happens, it all passed. And it got worse. There were many, in this segment there were many interviews, and there were interjections. And I mean, she's a minister in the Israeli government. I mean, she's a senior figure.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the Linda Reynolds, Brittany Higgins case, because this is extraordinary. And we do have a grab from Louise Milligan.
There's a strong but unofficial tradition in federal politics of what happens in Canberra stays in Canberra. Politicians, political staff and media operate in what's known as the Canberra bubble. Along with the political gamesmanship, there's a heady, permissive culture, and that culture can be toxic for women. Tonight on Four Corners, we go inside the Canberra bubble with an investigation that questions the conduct of some of the most senior politicians in the nation.
And it's important that we listen to just one more grab on this.
The Liberal Party has been grappling with what's been described as a woman problem for several years, with accusations of endemic sexism.
So, brilliant. I'm so glad that you've brought this up, because I've been thinking about this as well, particularly the Lisa Wilkinson at Channel 10.
Yep.
The court in itself is saying, hey, there are a lot of issues with what you put to air, and they were maliciously false. The tone of Louise Milligan's reporting on the ABC, it had this air of wanting it all to be true, to uncover this kind of web of nefarious... What do you make of it?
Well, Louise Milligan in that program only focused on Liberal or Nationals, only on coalition politicians' bad behaviour to women. There was no mention of Labor politicians or Labor staffers or Greens or anyone else. It was just on the Liberals and the Nationals. And that created an atmosphere that somehow in Canberra, the real problem in Canberra with harassment of women was a problem of the Liberals. And that then led to this attack on the Morrison government. Now, what the judge in Western Australia found out in the recent case of Senator Reynolds against Brittany Higgins was that Brittany Higgins, having watched that program, became obsessed with it in a sense and felt that it explained all her problems. And so then she stated her problems with respect to that program. So what the judge is saying in a very long 365-page judgment, and a very well-written and meticulously researched judgment, is that that program of Louise Milligan affected Brittany Higgins' judgment of what had happened to her a couple of years previously, and she reframed it within that framework. So what the judge was saying is essentially without that program, whatever Brittany Higgins said, she wouldn't have said it about Senator Reynolds, because her issue was a different issue, but she then said that Senator Reynolds and Fiona Brown in Senator Reynolds' office hadn't handled it correctly. And the judge says, and the previous judge, Justice Lee, in another case said that Reynolds' office has handled it exactly the way it should be handled, an allegation of rape. But what the judge in Western Australia is saying is that the Louise Milligan report distorted what was happening in Parliament House, and that influenced Brittany Higgins.
And also, you see that it's getting a lot of attention. So the journalists who prepared the Higgins, and I think the biggest issue with this as well is that they led her to it. There was, in my opinion, coaching that was going on. Yes. And they were doing it because they knew that there was this, big story sitting there and they wanted to get in on it. Very problematic. But look, let's move on because I want to play this grab from Insiders.
Benjamin Netanyahu has fired a broadside at our own Prime Minister. He was being the tough guy.
He certainly was. As we have here, Anthony Albanese is weak when he should be caving to bullying and ignoring starving children like a real man. I don't think old Bibi's on the high moral ground here that he thinks he is.
No.
Your thoughts?
Well, that's Fiona Katakis from The Guardian praising her own cartoon on the talking segment, the Talking Pictures segment with Michael Bowles, who used to be at the Left Wing Guardian's, now gone to the Left Wing New Daily. So she's brave in that. But what she's essentially saying is, and he doesn't challenge it at all, is that Benjamin Netanyahu wants children to die. He wants them to be persecuted. Now, there's no evidence whatsoever for that. But again, it's up to the presenter to sort of challenge these things. But I mean, it was all lined up. She presented the cartoon. She commented on her own cartoon. She agreed with herself. And he, by saying nothing, agreed with her. And it's just an attack on the current Israeli government.
Isn't it interesting that they always find a way to challenge Jewish perspectives?
Well, there were 3 cartoons in that segment, and everything said much the same thing. It was just an attack on Israel. No balance at all.
Gerard Henderson, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.